Good.
So, Anne, can you please tell the listeners a little bit about you?
Yeah, I am a sports management agent, but I started out, I've always kind of been involved in sports. So I started out as a PE teacher and loved that, loved working with kids, and was also a volleyball player. So I played that up to a good level as well. Um, Loved the mindset part and was fascinated by that. So went back and became a sports psychologist. And then worked about 20 years as a sports psychologist and through that. And that's it evolved into the sports management now. And that's where we are at the moment.
And you've created something called Or Hub Sports Management. So, what does your company do, and how do you support athletes?
Awe Hub is all about the awe stands for a winning edge. So it's all about helping give the athletes a secure and a safe platform to be able to go and do what they want to do, which is basically win. We are there to support them, so we help them build their brand and help them build their identity within their career, and we bring in sponsorship and endorsements, put that around them, also put around the sports science teams, because obviously coming from that background, massively passionate about that. But make sure that their welfare is taken care of as well, and then help them transition into their next career as well.
And in terms of that support and welfare and putting a team around them, do you think there's a demand for former athletes to be supported by sports therapists after they retire?
Massively, yeah, because you've got athletes that will have been training possibly day in, day out, heading towards their competition, heading towards possibly big championships, and for them to suddenly stop and do nothing else, their bodies are just going to go into some kind of shock, or they mentally will also just not handle it. So definitely see a role with detraining, so being able to, I mean, you guys know all about that, but just, taking them gradually back down into, I guess, a more regular kind of body shape or fitness level or whatever it is. And I guess with that as well is just making sure that all joints and muscles and that they are still healthy and staying well, especially as they age. And definitely from a kind of the person as a whole, kind of making sure that they are healthy and kind of functioning and being able to be as a wonderful human being, as now that they've finished their athletic career or their sports career.
Yeah, definitely. I know that we've spoke previously about how I've maybe supported athletes in the past,
Mm.
having them come back from things like the Olympic Games and having to ensure that they're suddenly just not left in this sort of this gap in the at the end of the career, but the start of the something else.
Yeah.
And so we've been doing the training with them and making sure that they are maintaining that healthy body, but also trying to be there as a support as well in terms of that healthy mind as well.
Yeah, it's good. I always kind of talk about a bit of post-games blues. So that's not even if they're finishing their career, but it's that little chunk of time after where they've been so focused on where they're going to, that they need that space of time to be able to almost decompress and then kind of come back up. But it's even more important if they're finishing their career, so that can be even more elongated. So they need that support around them.
Yeah, and I know that you've been to different training camps, and sometimes I think we can suffer from that as well a little bit as practitioners.
Massively.
Once you've had this really good experience at a training camp, and then suddenly you come back, and there's that tiredness that's associated with it, but also like this lull in terms of what's going to happen next. So I
I
can
actually
understand.
always, yeah, I actually always put something in for about a week after one of those, just to give me something really good to look forward to. So I actually moved house one time after one of the games. So yeah, that was fun.
That sounds very stressful to me. So, what common things do you do with your athletes in terms of a psychologist capacity?
Uh, we're looking at helping them get mental performance so that they are ready to compete, because everything is going towards competition and helping them be able to either get on a podium, take the wins, whatever. So some of it's overcoming mental barriers, so some of the things that might be cropping up that are stopping them being able to perform at the highest level. Help them blast through the limiting beliefs as well. And that's massive, because you've got it, we all come into anything with some kind of preconceived ideas that we've picked up through our world and through our history. And if some of those are actually affecting the athlete from a competition point of view, or from a self-esteem, or a whole load of different elements, then by reducing them, getting rid of them, it gives them a much clearer path to actually just concentrate on what they should be doing. So we do that. We use stuff to do with preparation, so pre-performance, pre-competition, all that side of it, and just also helping them cope with life outside of sport as well.
Okay, what kind of barriers do athletes come up against? Is it very individual, or are there some quite common themes that athletes struggle to cope with? I'm just thinking from a sports therapist capacity, who's working quite closely with athletes, how we can maybe identify some of those barriers and maybe help an athlete through that.
I think fear's a massive one, and that I think that'd be interesting for you guys as well, because fear's held in the body, I believe, so that can start to have a physiological effect as well. But yeah, it could be fear of failure, fear of success, fear of rejection. There's a whole load of elements in there that they can pick that up through different experiences, working with different teams or coaches or people, just anything. And if that's cropping up and it keeps recurring, then it's very difficult to kind of have this focused kind of view on where you want to get to, because you keep getting kind of knocked off path and knocked off track as well. So yeah, that's a massive one, and you guys have got a fantastic role within that, because looking after the physiological side of things and keeping them, we tense when when we're in a state of fear, and we start to muscles contract and things like that. So I think there's a real kind of dual part there.
Yeah, great. So if you had any advice for sports therapists regarding the psychological well-being of the athletes, what would that advice be?
Be really open to listening to them. You guys have got an amazing advantage, because with anything that has anything to do with hands-on, the athlete, it almost creates this immediate channel of communication. And actually the speed of trust and the speed of them beginning to open up actually can be a lot quicker with a therapist than it can sometimes be with a talking kind of communication sort of partner or therapist like ourselves, whatever. So the fact that you've got somebody that's about to maybe open up more than you might expect, don't worry about it, just listen. And actually sometimes the act of them just getting it off their chest is a start to them being able to process it. And actually, if it's something then that you don't want to, or you feel you can't deal with, then it's just a conversation to say, listen, this is maybe not my area. Can I put you in touch with somebody? And if they say, yeah, brilliant. If not, then the confidentiality kind of comes into it. The other bit, encourage journaling. And I'd say that from a physiological point of view, the physical journaling is as important, because sometimes with dips of confidence or motivation or whatever, being able to reflect back on some of those journal episodes where they've maybe had a good week or they've seen themselves improving or things like that, it can just give them that little boost in motivation. So that's really cool. And also just being part of that support network around the athletes, because it's all these different points of contact that help us make up a really good picture of the athlete and just see them as a whole. And actually some things that you might have picked up and something that I might have picked up, because we've got this trusted support network, then that a conversation can come up where that can actually give us an insight into something that either from a physical point of view you can maybe start to approach, or from a more psychological point of view we can approach.
Yeah, definitely. I think the strengthening a multidisciplinary team as they all come together and have that level of communication to ensure that the best care for the athlete is really important. I think
Yeah,
one
it's
thing you
huge.
mentioned at the start, was that basically these athletes who we're in contact with as sports therapists, more often not on a daily basis if we're in a sports setting, especially in the level of almost hands-on applied skills that we need to do as sports therapists, that does create that instant bridge for communication. And quite often, as you mentioned, and I've had it happen to me in the past, where athletes are there willing to open up to you because you are the supportive person. You're not in a managerial role, you're not in a coaching role, and so you're seen as being on that sort of side of the line in comparison to where that management line sits. So quite often athletes do open up. So I really do consider that to be that important communication bridge that we have as sports therapists. So other than working with athletes, you also work with companies and businesses as well. So would you mind telling us a little bit about what you've done there?
Yeah, I see people as, if you're human, you just happen to be in another environment. So you tend to use a lot of the sports psychology principles and adapt that into the business world. And I've always seen sport as um, excellence in action. So you actually get to see excellence played out, whereas you don't sometimes get to see that in the business world because it might be in a boardroom or behind closed doors. And you get to see success and you get to see failure. And they always say success leaves clues. So you can start to pick up what successful people do day in, day out, maybe within the routines or how they approach things or their attitude. So that it's those kind of lessons that I think are really transferable into the business world, and actually how you deal with failure. Because again, every sports person has had success, but they've also all had failure. And I think it's great to be able to learn lessons from that as well. So that's just some of the ways.
Excellent. So if the listeners want to find out a little bit more about you, where could they go?
So they can pop on the website, which is www.awinningedgehub.com. Or come on to Instagram. I'm on there, which is exactly the same, awinningedgehub.com, or LinkedIn. I am Anne Bach.
And thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and coming on the Sports Therapy Community Streamed. I'll make sure all of those contact details are included within our show notes, and I'm sure that the listeners will find this episode really useful. So thank you for your time.
It's been great. Thank you.